There was one thing nobody knew about Victor Hale's cold heart. He did not hate love. He was scared of what love had already taken from him. Imani learned that too late. The night everything broke, she stood in the nursery and said, "You don't get to punish me because you're afraid." Victor looked at her with that hard, empty face and said, "And you don't get to lie to me in my own house." She stared at him. "You really think I betrayed you?" He did not answer fast enough. Then her hand hit the doorframe and she went still. "Victor." This time her voice came out thin. "Something's wrong. What's the wildest secret you ever found by accident? The kind that made you see somebody in a whole new way. Before we expose this lie, do me a quick favor." A coworker said storytelling channels like ours are fading out. "I want to show them we are just getting started. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe now. It's completely free and fuels the channel. Tell me where in the world you're watching from down below. Now sit back and enjoy this story. Because before this night was over, a man who had not smiled in years was about to break open in a hospital room. And the sound that did it would change his family forever. For 9 years, people had photos of Victor Hale standing in places built for joy and looking like he wished he were anywhere else. Hotel openings, fundraisers, big dinner parties with ice sculptures nobody touched and string quartets nobody heard. In every photo, somebody next to Victor was smiling too hard, like they were trying to make up for whatever was missing on his face. It never worked. Victor did not grin for cameras. He did not laugh at jokes. He did not do that fake rich man smile either, the one that says I'm friendly while the eyes say don't get comfortable. Nothing. Just that still face. That sharp jaw. That look that made grown men fix their ties before speaking to him. The papers called him cold. His workers called him sir. His own family called him difficult when he was not in the room and careful when he was. But the line people said most was simple. Victor Hale never smiled. Not when he signed million-dollar deals. Not when he won court battles. Not even when his company got named one of the best in the state 3 years in a row. If anything, good news made him look more tired. People had theories. Some said he was born that way. Some said money had dried him out from the inside. Some said he had loved once and got burned so bad he never came back right. Most people were wrong. Then he got married. And that made the city lose its mind. Because Victor Hale did not marry some polished woman from a family with old money and a vacation house with a name. He married a black woman from Brookside who owned a flower shop with chipped paint on the front door and a bell that rang too loud every time somebody walked in. Her name was Imani Brooks. She had good hands. Steady hands. The kind that could build a wedding arch in the morning and a funeral spray by lunch and still wrap somebody's anniversary roses before closing time. She also had bills stacked in a drawer by the register. A mother whose hands hurt so bad some mornings she could not button her own sweater. A younger brother named Owen who was trying hard to stay clean and knew how easy it was to fall. Imani did not have time to be impressed by rich men. That was part of the reason Victor noticed her. The first time they met was at a charity event at the Hale family estate. Imani's shop had landed the flower job because a bigger florist backed out 2 days before setup. And Imani was the kind of person who said yes first and figured out the hard part while driving there. The estate sat on a hill outside the city. Big stone house, tall windows, iron gates, the kind of place that looked beautiful from the road and lonely up close. Inside, everything was polished and cold. Clean lines, pale walls, old paintings, huge rooms that made people lower their voices without knowing why. Imani had been there since 7 that morning, fixing floral pieces some planner had clearly designed on a laptop instead of in a real room. At 6 that evening, she was standing on a ladder near the ballroom doors, moving white branches out of people's sight lines, when she heard 2 servers whispering, "It's freezing in the West Wing. You tell him, I like my job." Imani looked across the room. A woman near the piano rubbed her arms. A waiter by the service door kept cupping his hands and breathing into them. She climbed down, brushed leaf dust off her dress, and walked straight toward the man everybody else kept orbiting around. Victor stood near the fireplace talking to 3 donors and looking as warm as a court summons. Imani waited until the donors moved. Then she said, "Your guests are cold." Victor turned his head slowly. He looked at her. really looked. Not the quick once-over rich men gave women they planned to forget. And how would you know that? He asked. Because the woman by the piano has goosebumps. Imani pointed with her chin. And your waiter keeps blowing on his hands by the service door. Victor glanced once. That was all. Then he said to the man behind him, "Fix the heat in the West Wing." "Yes, sir." Then Victor looked back at her. "You could have told staff." "I tried." Imani shrugged. One of them blocked the stairs like he was guarding the family crown. Victor's eyes shifted to his right. "My uncle. That makes sense." The man behind Victor made a sound like he had swallowed wrong. Victor studied her another second. Most people rushed to fill quiet around him. Imani did not. She stood there with florist tape stuck around one wrist and waited. Then she said, "Also, your centerpieces are too tall." The man behind Victor blinked hard. Victor asked, "Too tall for what?" "For people." Imani said it flat. "Nobody wants to lean around a tree just to finish dinner." Victor looked across the ballroom again, then back at her. "Can you fix them?" "Yes. Do it." That should have been the end of it. It was not. 3 weeks later, Victor Hale walked into Brooks Bloom's at 8 in the morning, while Imani was standing on a stool changing the chalkboard sign in the window. The bell over the door rang so hard she nearly dropped the chalk. "We're not open for another 20. She looked down and froze. "Oh!" Victor stood in the middle of the shop in a dark coat with rain on the shoulders. He looked so out of place among buckets of tulips and baby's breath that for a second Imani thought the whole thing had to be some kind of mistake. Her mother, Evelyn, was in the back trimming stems at the work table. The radio played low. The cooler hummed like it always did when it felt dramatic. Victor said, "I need 10 minutes. Imani stepped down from the stool. "That sounds costly." His face did not change, but something in his eyes did. Like he had noticed the joke and filed it away. "What kind of flowers?" she asked. "It's not flowers." "Well, that's rude. That's sort of our whole business." He reached into his coat and placed a thin envelope on the counter. Imani opened it. "Read the first page." "Read it again." Then set it down. Then picked it back up. "A 1-year marriage." She looked at him. "You came here with a contract." "Yes." "Not a conversation." "The contract explains the terms." Imani let out one short laugh. "You really do know how to charm a room." Victor did not react. That somehow made the whole thing stranger. He explained it in the same calm voice he probably used to tell people their projects were dead. His grandfather's will had tied control of Hale development to the image of family stability. If Victor stayed unmarried by the end of the year, 2 board seats would shift to his aunt and cousin, both of whom wanted control and had wanted it for a long time. "I need a wife the board cannot buy," he said. Imani stared at him. "That might be the worst proposal I've ever heard." "It isn't a proposal." "No," she tapped the papers. "It's a hostage deal with nice paper." From the back room came the sound of stems being clipped just a little too slowly. Her mother was absolutely listening. Victor went on like he had not heard a thing. In return for 1 year of marriage, he would pay off the shop's debt, cover Evelyn's hand surgery, settle Owen's rehab balance, and place enough money in trust that Imani would not spend the next 10 years drowning over rent and wholesale costs. She hated that the numbers made her chest tighten. Not because they were fake, because they were real. "You could ask somebody else," she said. "Yes." "Then why me?" Victor looked around the shop. At the taped-up cooler handle. At the old register. At the tired hydrangeas she had bought cheap because she thought she could save them. Then he looked back at her. "Because you told me the truth in a room full of people who needed something from me." That answer stayed with her longer than she wanted it to. She married him 19 days later at the courthouse. No magazine spread. No giant wedding cake. No string music. No family smiles. Her mother wore blue. Owen wore a suit that fit him better than most of his old life ever had. Victor's side had 2 lawyers, 1 assistant, and a family driver who looked like he had seen everything already and was not in a hurry to see more. Imani wore a cream suit she had bought off the rack and fixed herself at the waist. Victor wore charcoal gray and looked like he was signing a merger. The judge did her job. Papers got stamped. Rings got exchanged. The whole thing took less time than most wedding toasts. Outside, rain tapped the courthouse steps. Victor opened the car door for Imani. She got in beside him and stared at her own hands for a second. That was when he said, "You can still back out." Imani turned slowly. "Sir, the ink is dry. I'm aware." Then that sentence was better 5 minutes ago. He gave one small nod. Noted. That was day one of her marriage to Victor Hale. The estate was worse at night. During the day it looked like money. At night it looked like memory. Long halls, dark wood, guest rooms nobody used, a library that could swallow sound whole, a back wing the housekeeper only called the north side, never more than that. The staff learned her tea order before sunrise the next day. Her closet filled with clothes in her size by noon. Bills disappeared from her phone one by one. Her mother's surgery got booked with a specialist who had been impossible to reach 2 weeks earlier. Owen called her from treatment and cried so hard he had to pass the phone off and come back. Imani sat on the edge of the bed in one of the guest suites and pressed a hand to her forehead. Victor had done every single thing he promised. That should have made life easier. It did and it didn't, because Victor was a hard man to live with. He ate breakfast at 6:30 on the dot. He answered questions with clean, exact words that left no room to hide in. He noticed everything. A crooked frame, a late car, a missing file, a spoon left on the wrong side of a plate. He never yelled. That made it worse. Anger burns hot and fast. Victor's cold had corners. He sat in a room and stayed there. Some nights he came home late, loosened his cufflinks, and gave Imani answers so short they felt like paper cuts. "How was your meeting?" "Long." "Did you eat?" "Yes." "You want tea?" "No." Then he would open his laptop and the whole room would belong to work. Imani told herself she could do a year. A year was math. Math could be counted. But the problem with living near somebody every day is that sooner or later you start seeing the parts they do not show on purpose. She noticed Victor never slept through the night. She noticed him walking the library at 2 in the morning with no lights on but the lamp by the far shelf. She noticed he stopped dead once at a family photo in the hall. Not long. Just long enough for her to see there had to be a story there. And she noticed something else. For all his hard edges, Victor never spoke cruelly to the staff. Briefly, yes. Coldly, yes. But never carelessly. He thanked the cook. He moved aside for the maid carrying linens. He remembered the groundskeeper's name and once asked after his wife's surgery without looking up from the file in his hand. That did not fit the picture people sold of him. It made Imani uneasy in a different way. One Thursday afternoon, she spent 3 hours in the greenhouse behind the estate trying to bring the place back to life. It had once been beautiful. You could tell. Now it was dusty glass, cracked panes, dead pots, and one bitter little lemon tree that looked like it took everything personally. Imani came back inside with dirt on her jeans and found a long flat box on the kitchen table. Inside were custom-cut panes for the broken greenhouse windows. There was a note in Victor's neat handwriting. "You measured them yesterday. These should fit." That was it. No name. No extra line. Just that. She stood there holding the note while the cook stirred soup on the stove and pretended not to watch her face. That night, Victor came home just after 8. Imani was waiting in the kitchen. He stepped in, saw the box open on the table, and loosened his tie. "You got the glass," she said. "Yes." "You ordered it." "Yes." She folded her arms. "You are a very confusing man." Victor set his keys down. "That sounds like criticism." "It is confusion." She tipped her head. "You bought greenhouse glass for your fake wife." His eyes moved to her face, then to the dirt still under one of her nails, then back again. "You looked disappointed by the broken panes," he said. Imani stared at him for a second. "That is maybe the strangest kind thing anybody has ever done for me." Victor took off his watch and placed it on the counter. "I'm not sure it qualifies as kind." "See that right there?" She pointed at him. "That's what I mean." "What?" "You do a kind thing and then talk about it like you're filing taxes." For the first time, The corner of his mouth looked like it almost moved. Almost. Imani caught it. She leaned forward. Was that a smile? No. It almost was. It was not. She grinned. Interesting. Victor picked up a glass from the counter. You are very committed to being annoying. And yet here you are, buying me greenhouse windows. He looked at her over the rim of the glass. Then he said, Don't confuse attention with softness, Imani. The room went quiet. Not heavy. Just still. Imani nodded once. That sounds like a rule you tell yourself a lot. Victor did not answer. And right there, without knowing why yet, Imani understood one thing. Victor Hale did not live like a man who had never felt anything. He lived like a man who had felt too much once and decided he would rather freeze than ever burn like that again. The first real crack in Victor showed up 2 weeks later in a hospital waiting room. Imani's mother, Evelyn, finally had her hand surgery scheduled. For months she had been putting it off, saying she could manage, saying she only needed to stop opening jars the wrong way, saying all the things mothers say when they know money is tight and do not want to make themselves one more problem on the list. But now the date was set. The surgeon was good. The hospital was private. The chairs in the waiting room were soft enough to make regular people nervous. Victor had a land deal closing in Denver that same morning. Imani knew because she had heard 2 men from his office in the hallway the night before talking like the whole state would fall into the ocean if Victor missed one phone call. So she told him not to come. You have a big day, she said in the kitchen while the coffee machine hissed between them. I'll be with my mom. Owen's coming too. We're fine. Victor buttoned one cuff. What time is check-in? 5:30. He reached for his briefcase. I'll have the driver take you. You don't need to do that. Owen can drive us. Owen should not be white-knuckling traffic before sunrise if his mother is going into surgery. She's my mother. Victor looked at her. I'm aware. Imani folded her arms. You know what I mean. Yes. He picked up his keys. I also know you think asking for help turns into debt, and that makes you annoying in very specific ways. She blinked. Was that your version of care? It was my version of accuracy. He left for work. At 5:40 the next morning, Imani was sitting beside her mother in pre-op when somebody lowered a paper cup of coffee into her line of sight. She looked up. Victor. Dark suit. Hair still damp from an early shower. Tie straight. Face set in that same hard, tidy way it always was, except for the fact that he was here at all. In his other hand was a crumpled gift shop bag. Imani stared at him. What are you doing here? Victor sat down beside her like this had always been the plan. Bringing coffee. Evelyn, already in her hospital gown, looked between them and smiled, the kind of smile mothers save for moments when they see what 2 foolish people cannot. What's in the bag? She asked. Victor looked down at it. Butter cookies. Imani let out a laugh she did not mean to. He glanced over. The cafe downstairs was closed. You bought hospital gift shop cookies. Yes. For my mother. Victor looked mildly offended. The surgeon said no food after midnight. They are for after. Evelyn reached out and patted his sleeve. That is very sweet. Victor did not know where to put his face after that. Imani saw it. The tiny discomfort. The almost boy look that flashed through the man everybody else found impossible. It was gone in a second, but she caught it. A nurse came to will Evelyn back. Imani stood. Victor stood too. Her mother squeezed both their hands before the bed rolled away. Try not to fight while they fix me. We weren't fighting, Imani said. Victor said, not actively. That earned him a look from Imani and a laugh from Evelyn before the doors swung shut. They sat in the waiting room side by side. The morning TV on the wall played some loud cooking show nobody watched. A man across from them kept tapping the same page of a magazine without turning it. Somewhere down the hall, a cart wheel squeaked every 5 seconds like it had a personal grudge. Imani looked at Victor. You're going to miss your meeting. I moved it. You moved a whole land deal. Yes. For this. He turned his head and looked at the surgery doors. Yes. Imani let that sit there. After a minute, she said softer. You didn't have to. Victor answered without looking at her. That is the second time you've said that to me, as if it matters. She frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means. He paused. People use have to as if care only counts when it's forced. Imani looked at him for a long second. Then she looked away because suddenly the waiting room felt warmer than it had a minute ago. When the surgeon finally came out with good news, Victor stood up at the same time she did. Evelyn was fine. Recovery looked good. Physical therapy would be annoying. Results should be excellent. Imani closed her eyes for 1 second and let the breath leave her body. Victor touched the middle of her back. Just once. Flat palm. Steady hand. No show in it. No comment. Just there. That touch stayed with her longer than she wanted. He left for Denver 20 minutes later. Not before. And when Imani got home that evening, there was a folded receipt on the kitchen table with a number written on the back. Use this one. People answer it faster. No name. No extra line. Just that. She read it 4 times. Then got annoyed at herself for reading it 4 times. By December, the house felt different. Not warm exactly, but lived in. Imani's paperbacks started showing up in the library and staying there. Her scarves appeared over chair backs. Fresh flowers from the shop ended up in corners that had probably never held anything living in years. The cook began asking what she wanted for dinner instead of what she could tolerate. The maid stopped sounding afraid when she knocked. Even Victor shifted. Small things first. He learned she hated bright overhead lights at night and began turning on lamps before she came downstairs. He started asking if she had eaten before asking what the florist bill ran that week. Once, after a long phone call with city planners, he came into the kitchen and stood there while she chopped herbs like he had forgotten why he walked in and did not feel like leaving yet. She looked up. Can I help you? Victor leaned one hand on the counter. You're singing. Imani froze. I am not. You are. No, I am humming. Very different. Victor considered that. One has words. Exactly. He nodded like he had been handed useful legal facts. She shook her head. Do you always talk like this? Like what? Like you're cross-examining a sandwich. He looked at the cutting board. I don't question sandwiches. See, that's growth. For a second, the room almost softened. Then his phone rang, and the moment snapped in half. Still, she had seen enough by then to know Victor's coldness was not simple. Simple people enjoyed being cruel. Victor looked more like a man following rules he hated and could not stop obeying. One Sunday afternoon, the whole bluff lost power. It happened fast. 1 second the kitchen was lit and warm with stew on the stove and rain tapping the back windows. The next second everything shut off in one clean sweep. Lights, vent, clock, even the low hum of the refrigerator. Imani stood still with a wooden spoon in her hand. Then she heard Victor's footsteps from the hall. He walked in already reaching for the flashlight on his phone. The backup failed. Imani looked at the dark room and smiled. Thank God. Victor stopped. You're thanking God for a power outage. I'm thanking God because now you can't work. I can work. In the dark. I have a phone. That is deeply sad. Victor looked at the black screen above the oven. It is practical. It is tragic. The cook had already gone home because the weather looked bad. So it was just the two of them, a half-finished stew, and a house suddenly too big and too quiet. Imani found candles in a drawer. Victor found more. They lit the kitchen and stayed there because the dining room in candlelight felt like a haunted museum. Victor set the table while Imani finished dinner on the gas stove. He put the spoons on the wrong side. She moved one. He noticed immediately. Was that necessary? Yes. Why? Because that's where spoons go. According to who? People with home training. Victor stared at her. Imani stared right back. Then she said, You own 6 buildings downtown and somehow lost a fight with silverware. He sat down. Not smiling. But not quite not smiling either. The candlelight moved across his face and for one strange second he looked younger. Less carved. Less guarded. They ate stew and bread and listened to rain hit the windows in waves. After a while, Imani said, You can relax, you know? Victor looked up from his bowl. I am eating stew by candlelight in my own kitchen. How much looser should I get? She set her spoon down. You talk like somebody trapped you here against your will. Nobody trapped me. Victor, you sound like a man being held hostage by soup. For 1 second nothing happened. Then the corner of his mouth moved. Just a little. But it moved. Imani gasped. There. Victor blinked. What? That. She pointed at his face. That was almost a smile. No. It really was. It was a small shift. On your face. Yes. That is what a smile is. He folded his napkin once. It was not enough to qualify. Imani laughed so hard she had to lean back in her chair. Victor watched her. Not the careful look he gave in rooms full of people. Not the flat look he used at work. Something quieter. Like he was hearing a sound in the house he had forgotten belonged there. The candles burned lower. The rain kept going. And somewhere in the middle of that dark kitchen, Victor told her the first true thing he had not meant to say. Started small. Not with a confession. More like a crack. He had gone very still after she laughed. His eyes rested on the candle flame, not on her. Imani felt the shift before she understood it. What? She asked. Victor did not answer right away. Then he said, My mother liked storms. That seemed like a strange sentence to drop in the middle of dinner. But Imani did not interrupt. She used to turn off half the lights in the house. His voice stayed level, but something in it had gone flat in a different way. Said lightning looked better when the rooms were dim. Imani waited. Victor looked down at his bowl. The north side used to be the nursery wing. Used to. There it was. A word carrying more than the rest of the sentence. Imani set her spoon down slowly. Victor. He kept going like stopping would be worse. I had twin brothers. He said it plain. Too plain. They were babies. The kitchen felt smaller all at once. Imani did not move. There are moments when language becomes the wrong tool. This was one of them. Victor looked at the dark window over the sink. There was a fire. Imani breathed in. He still did not look at her. I was 19. His jaw tightened once. Smoke started downstairs. I thought I could stop it there before it spread. I went for the extinguisher in the hall closet. The words were clean. Careful. Too careful. The kind of careful people use when they've told a story to themselves so many times they've worn all the blood off it. My father got my mother out. He paused. By the time anybody made it upstairs, the nursery was gone. The candle on the table made the shadows under his eyes look deeper. Imani felt her own throat tighten. Victor's hands were flat on either side of his bowl. So still it almost looked painful. I should have gone upstairs first, he said. There it was. Not grief. Verdict. Imani saw it right away. He had not just remembered that night. He had sentenced himself with it. Victor. Her voice came out softer than she expected. You were 19. That changes nothing. It changes everything. He gave a short shake of his head. No. Yes. His eyes finally lifted to hers, and the look in them made her chest hurt. Not anger. Not coldness. Something older. Harder. The face of a man who had built a life on one bad minute and never walked away from it. My mother never blamed me, he said. My father did. Imani said nothing. He never said it directly. Victor's mouth pulled once, not close to a smile. He was better dressed than that. But after that night, everything in the house changed. Every room felt like a courtroom. Every silence had a point. He leaned back slightly, and the chair gave a small creak under him. I learned very quickly that grief makes people sloppy. It makes them soft in the wrong places. It makes them miss things. So I stopped allowing that. Imani looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached out and moved his bowl half an inch because he had lined it up perfectly with the grain in the wood table. Victor glanced down at the bowl, then at her hand, then back at her face. That might be, she said quietly, the saddest rule anybody ever made for himself. Victor did not answer. He also did not move away. Outside, the rain eased. Inside, the candles burned low and made the kitchen look smaller, safer. more honest than it ever did with full power. After a while, Victor stood and began collecting dishes. Imani blinked. You're doing dishes. I am carrying them to the sink. That still counts as shock. He put her bowl beside the pot. Don't exaggerate. You told me your deepest trauma and now you're rinsing plates. This is a huge night. Victor turned on the tap. Nothing happened. He looked at the dead faucet with open dislike. No water pump, he said. Imani covered a laugh with her hand. The universe said that's enough growth for one evening. Something near his mouth shifted again. Smaller this time. But there. She saw it. He knew she saw it. Neither of them said a word. The next morning the power came back. With it came the old shape of the house. The clean lines. The distance. Phones ringing. Staff moving. Emails waiting. But something had changed. Not in the estate. In them. Imani found Victor in the library before noon signing papers with a mug of coffee at his elbow. She held up the silver lighter she had found on the sunroom ledge that morning. You left this. Victor glanced at it. I know. She walked closer and set it beside his papers. You don't smoke. No. Then why keep a lighter? Victor sat back in his chair. For a second she thought he would say nothing. Instead he said, It was my mother's. Imani nodded once. Okay. No push. No digging. Just okay. Victor looked at her hand still resting near the desk. Then he said, You're better at quiet than most people. She smiled a little. That might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me. It wasn't intended as nice. See? That's the part of you I'd like to fight in a parking lot. Victor looked at her for 1 second longer than usual. Then he went back to his papers. But later that evening, when she came downstairs, every harsh overhead light in the sitting room was off. Only the lamp by the couch was on, and her book sat waiting on the end table beside a cup of tea. He was not in the room. He had still done it. That was the problem with Victor. He was hardest to resist when he was not trying to be tender. Christmas came quiet at the estate. No giant party. No fake joy. Just staff dinner in the kitchen on Christmas Eve. A simple lunch the next day, and enough winter light through the tall windows to make the whole house look softer than it felt. Imani's mother came over with her hands wrapped and healing well. Owen came too, clean and nervous and trying not to look overwhelmed by how rich everything was. The cook made ham. Somebody from housekeeping brought sweet potatoes that made Evelyn close her eyes after the first bite and say, Now this right here is church food. Victor sat through all of it looking stiff at first, then less so. When Owen dropped gravy on the tablecloth and started apologizing like the world might end, Victor only handed him a napkin and said, It's fabric, not a hostage. Owen stared. Imani stared too. Evelyn hid a smile behind her glass. Later, while the others were in the den, Evelyn stood beside Imani in the kitchen drying plates. You love him. Imani nearly dropped the dish in her hand. Mama, that was not a question. Imani kept drying. This arrangement has terms. Baby, love does not care about paperwork. Imani blew out a breath. He doesn't even know how to hold a normal conversation half the time. He says sweet things like he's reporting weather damage. Still listening. And I do not need this from you on Christmas. Evelyn hung a towel over her shoulder and looked toward the doorway where Victor's voice carried low from the next room. You know what I think, her mother said. Imani rubbed at a plate that was already dry. I'm scared to ask. I think that man has been lonely so long he mistakes it for order. Imani stopped moving. Because that was it. That was exactly it. Later that night, after her family had gone home and the staff had cleared the kitchen, Imani found Victor in the front hall looking at an old framed photo on the wall. Not touching it. Just standing there. She came up beside him. The photo showed a younger version of the Hale family on the front steps of the estate. Victor's father tall and stern. His mother bright-eyed and elegant. Victor, maybe 19, already serious. And in her arms, 2 baby boys in matching knit caps. Imani looked from the photo to Victor. You keep this one out here on purpose, she said. Yes. Why? Victor's eyes stayed on the glass. So I don't forget what happens when people stop paying attention. Imani turned and looked at him fully. That's not what happened. He said nothing. It isn't. She kept her voice even. A fire happened. A tragedy happened. Grief happened. But you talk like love failed some test. And I don't think that's true. Victor's jaw tightened. For a second she thought he would shut down and walk away. Instead he said very quietly, "You don't know what's true." Imani held his gaze. "Then tell me." He did not. Not yet. But he did not leave either. And for Victor Hale that counted. After Christmas, the house changed in a way Imani could feel more than explain. Nothing dramatic. No big speech. No big promise. No sudden turn into a sweet, easy marriage. That was not Victor. But he started staying in rooms longer. He started asking questions that did not lead anywhere useful. Questions that were not about schedules or bills or staff or business. What flower is that? Ranunculus. Why do you like it? It looks soft and stubborn at the same time. Victor stood by the greenhouse door with his hands in his coat pockets. That sounds like a person. Imani trimmed a stem and did not look up. Maybe that's why I like it. Another time he found her at the kitchen island sorting seed packets. You do know, he said, that we could buy anything growing in here fully formed. Imani looked up. You do know buying a tomato is not the same as growing one. It seems less muddy. That's because you hate joy with dirt on it. Victor pulled out a chair and sat down. Just sat. No file in his hand. No laptop. No phone. Imani noticed that first. Then she noticed he stayed while she talked about which herbs could survive the cold and which ones needed babying. He listened. Not politely. Not the way men listen when they want praise for surviving a conversation about something outside themselves. He really listened. That was new. It scared her a little. Because a cold man is easier than a changing one. A cold man gives you rules. A changing man gives you hope. And hope, Imani had learned young, could make smart women do reckless things with their hearts. One Friday afternoon she was in the upstairs sitting room working through shop numbers when Victor came in, loosened his tie, and dropped a folder on the table beside her. Imani looked at it. If that is paperwork for our marriage, I'm setting it on fire. It isn't. She opened the folder. Inside were plans. Not business plans. Renovation plans. For the old flower shop on Brookside. New cooler. Better lighting. Street-facing windows. Storage. Work table space. Fresh paint. Imani stared so long Victor finally said, I was told this is what a person's face looks like when they're reading. She looked up at him. What is this? An option. This is a full rebuild. Yes. For my shop. If you want it. Imani closed the folder slowly. Why? Victor set his cuff links on the table one by one. Because if you go back after this year, the building will still need saving. Her throat tightened before she could stop it. She hated that. She hated crying in front of men. Hated looking moved. Hated when gratitude made her feel small. Victor seemed to see all of that happen across her face in real time. He pulled out the chair across from her and sat. You can say no. That is not helping. It is information. Imani laughed once through the sting in her eyes. You always do that. Do what? Offer people something life-changing in the same tone you'd use to tell them their dry cleaning arrived. Victor leaned back in the chair. My dry cleaning is usually on time. She covered her face for a second, laughing despite herself. When she lowered her hands, Victor was watching her. That look again. Quiet. Steady. Too honest. Imani swallowed. This is too much. No. It is. It's brick and glass. It's my dream. Victor said nothing right away. Then low and plain he said, I know. That landed harder than the plans did. Not because he said it sweetly, because he said it like a fact he had taken time to learn. And Imani knew right then that she was in real trouble. Not contract trouble. Heart trouble. The kind that sneaks up on you while you're making soup and sorting bills and learning the sleep habits of a man you were never supposed to love. A week later, the first time he kissed her, it happened in the greenhouse. Of course it did. Imani had been out there in an old sweater and muddy boots trying to coax life out of the bitter lemon tree that looked like it wanted to stay mad forever. She had just spotted tiny new growth on one branch. Small, pale green, easy to miss if you did not care. Imani cared. She ran inside, found Victor in the library on a call, and stood in the doorway until he looked up. He put the call on mute. What? Come here. He frowned. I'm working. So am I. Come here. Imani. Victor. Maybe it was her face. Maybe it was the fact that almost nobody ordered him around and lived to enjoy it. Maybe he was already too far gone to resist her. Either way, he stood. He followed her through the back hall and out to the greenhouse. The winter air bit at their faces. Damp earth filled the room. Thin light came through the patched glass. Imani pulled him toward the lemon tree. Look. Victor looked at the tree, then at her, then back at the tree. I'm looking. New leaves. He studied the branch. Those are very small. They are still leaves. He put his hands in his coat pockets. You dragged me out here for tiny leaves. Yes. Victor looked around the greenhouse, at the pots, the tools, the dirt on her jeans, the excitement on her face. Then he looked at her the way a starving person looks at a window full of food. Imani felt it. All of it. The silence, the air, the dangerous, almost trembling stillness of that moment. You do know, she said, because if she did not joke she might stop breathing. This is just a tree. Yes. That did not sound like agreement. It wasn't. She smiled a little. Then what was it? Victor stepped closer. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just enough to change the air between them. I'm trying to understand, he said. What part of this is still pretend? Imani forgot every smart sentence she had. The marriage. Her voice came out softer than she meant it to. You mean? Victor's eyes stayed on hers. That ended a while ago. Then he kissed her. Like a man who had thought too long and wanted one clear answer at last. One hand came up to her face. Warm. Careful. Not rushed. Not greedy, not showy. Imani held the front of his coat like she needed something steady. When they pulled apart, they just stood there for a second, too close, breathing the same cold air. Then Imani said, Well. Victor's forehead rested lightly against hers. That is not a useful review. She laughed under her breath. Give me a second. My husband who talks like a tax lawyer just kissed me in a greenhouse. Victor's mouth moved again. More than before. Not a full smile. But close enough to count if a person was willing to be generous. Imani touched his jaw. There. He blinked. What? That little thing your face does when you forget to be miserable. I am not miserable. Victor. You've looked one bad phone call away from canceling Christmas since the day I met you. He took her hand and held it against his chest. And yet I married you. That was paperwork. This is not. No woman with any sense should have fallen harder because of one plain sentence in a drafty greenhouse. Imani did anyway. After that, the marriage changed for real. Not into a fairy tale. Into something better. Something lived in. Victor still worked too much. Still corrected people when they were wrong. Still made grown executives sweat with one raised brow and two quiet words. But at home, with her, the lines blurred. He started warming her tea without asking. She started leaving notes in places she knew he would find them. Buy more oranges. The cook needs butter. You are still strange. He never answered the notes directly. But the next day oranges would appear. Butter too. And once, under a grocery list, she found a slip of paper in his handwriting. You are not easy yourself. Imani kept that one in her wallet like a fool. They sat closer on the couch. His hand found the small of her back without looking for permission first. He started sleeping through more nights than before. Not all of them, but more. Sometimes she would wake at 2 and find him still beside her. Not pacing the library, not standing in hallways with ghosts. That mattered. Little things mattered most. One night in February, they came home from a dull charity dinner where Victor had spent 2 hours making rich men feel stupid with numbers. Imani kicked off her heels in the front hall. If one more person asks me where I went to finishing school, I am going to say county jail just to make the table interesting. Victor took off his coat. That would have livened dessert. She turned to him fast. Was that a joke? It was an observation. No, sir. That was humor. He walked toward the stairs. Don't ruin it by naming it. Imani followed him laughing. Oh my God. You really are getting better. He stopped halfway up the stairs and turned. At what? At being human in public. Victor looked down at her. Then, quiet enough that only she could hear it, he said, That may be because of you. There are lines a person remembers forever. That was one of them. Now let me say something here. If you're listening to this and your heart already hurts for Imani, do me a favor. Please subscribe and support this channel. Stories like this matter because real people live pieces of them every day. Cold love, quiet hurt, the hope that somebody can still change before it is too late. If you believe stories that mean something still deserve a place, hit subscribe right now and stay with me to the end. This one is going to hurt before it heals. By spring, Imani stopped counting how many months were left in the contract. That should have scared her. Instead it felt like relief. Victor stopped talking about the end too. Neither of them brought it up. Not because they were cowards, though maybe they were a little. Mostly because naming the thing would have made it feel fragile. And both of them knew they were standing inside something real now. Evelyn knew it too. The first time she came over after the greenhouse kiss. She watched Victor take Imani's plate to the sink without being asked and nearly smiled herself into another dimension. When Victor left the room to answer a call, Evelyn leaned across the kitchen table and whispered, That man has gone over you. Imani choked on her tea. Mama, I said what I said. He has not gone over me. Evelyn raised one brow. Baby, he just remembered you don't like peach yogurt and sent the whole case back with the grocery order. Imani stared at her. Her mother sat back and folded her hands. That is married love. That is control. That is care wearing a stiff collar. Imani tried not to smile. Failed. By early summer, she was pregnant. Victor found out at 6 in the morning on the bathroom floor. It was not elegant. Nothing about that morning deserved soft music or pretty lighting. Imani had been sick for a week, tired for 2, and moody for at least 10 days, which she would have blamed on heat if the calendar had not insisted it was still June. She took the test mostly to prove herself right for not being worried. Then she set it on the sink, stared at it, picked it up, set it down again, and finally made a sound so strange Victor came in from the bedroom already alert. What happened? Imani pointed at the sink. I think my life just changed. Victor looked at the test, looked again, then sat down right there on the bathroom tile like his knees had made a private choice without asking him. Imani, who was half crying and half laughing, wiped at her face. Say something. Victor kept staring at the test. Then he looked up at her with a face so pale she almost forgot she was the one meant to be having the moment. Victor. He swallowed once. I am aware there are several important things a husband should say right now. She blinked. Okay. I seem to have lost all of them. Imani started laughing, then crying harder because hormones were already doing what hormones do and she was apparently a weather system now. Victor reached for her wrist. Hey! She looked down at him. He nodded too fast. I'm here. You look like you're about to pass out. I may. That would have been funny if he had not looked so honestly shaken. She slid down to sit across from him on the floor. We're having a baby. Victor looked at the test again like it might say something new. Yes. We're adults. People do this every day. So I've heard. Victor. His eyes came back to hers, and what she saw there surprised her. Not fear exactly. Something bigger. A kind of stunned awe with panic braided all through it. He lifted her hand to his mouth and kissed her knuckles once. Then he said, almost to himself, I did not know I wanted this until this second. That was the sweetest thing he had ever said. It was also the start of the problem. At first, Victor's response to the pregnancy was almost funny. He became focused in ways that should have been charming and were maybe just 1 inch past that line. He changed doctors, then added another doctor. Then hired a nutritionist. Imani ignored the first time the woman suggested she should cut back on cheese for balance. He had the stairs runner replaced because he said it was too slick. He had staff move a side table because the corner looked dangerous. He came home early if Imani texted the words cramp, ache, dizzy, or not sure. One afternoon she sneezed so hard she pulled a muscle in her side. Victor was home in 12 minutes. She found him in the doorway of the sitting room, tie crooked, breathing hard. Imani stared. "Why are you here? You said pain." "I said I sneezed." He looked offended by the difference. "Those are not the same." "No kidding." He came over and touched her side gently. "Where?" She caught his wrist. "Victor, I am okay." He searched her face one more second before nodding once. Then, low, like he hated the sentence already, he said, "I do not enjoy uncertainty." Imani looked up at him. There it was again. Not control for the fun of it. Fear in a clean suit. She softened right away. Maybe too fast. "You're going to be a good dad," she said. Victor's face changed. Not outwardly much, but enough. Like somebody had opened a door inside him and he did not know whether to run from it or step through. He sat beside her on the couch and leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands clasped. After a while he said, "I would like to believe that." Imani rested her hand on his back. "You can." He did not answer. At the 20-week scan, the room was dim and cool, full of quiet machine sounds and small cheerful talk from the tech who had done this enough times to know parents needed ordinary words to hold on to. Imani watched the screen, smiling. Victor sat beside her, too still. The tech moved the wand, frowned in a good way, then smiled wider. "Well," she said, "there are two." Imani laughed first. Not because it was funny, because shock has to go somewhere. "Two what?" she asked, already knowing. The tech looked at her like she was being cute. "Two babies." Imani put both hands over her face. "Oh Lord." Then she turned to Victor. He had gone completely still. Not comic book still. Not dramatic. Just gone. Like every part of him had locked up at once. "Victor." He did not answer. The tech kept talking in that bright, kind voice about heartbeats and growth and everything looking good. But Victor looked at the screen like it had reached into his chest and pulled out something alive and dangerous. On the drive home, he held Imani's hand so tight it almost hurt. That night, he did not come to bed until after 2. The next week, he slept in the study twice because of calls. The week after that, nursery samples showed up and then disappeared. He approved a paint color, then changed it, then stopped discussing it. He went to every doctor visit. He did not miss one. But the softer he had become before, the tighter he got now. Like every good thing in the house had suddenly turned fragile, and he did not trust himself near fragile things. Imani told herself it was normal. Told herself men handled fear in odd ways. Told herself Victor loved hard and badly when he was scared. All of that was true. It was not enough. One evening she walked into the half-finished nursery and found him standing between 2 cribs the delivery men had just set up that afternoon. He had one hand on the rail of the crib nearest the window. He did not hear her come in. "I won't do this wrong again," he said. Imani stopped in the doorway. Again. That one word opened the whole wound. She put a hand on her stomach without thinking. "Victor." He turned fast. For a second he looked caught. Then the mask was back. Imani stepped farther into the room. "These babies are not your brothers." His jaw tightened. "I know that. Do you?" He looked away. "I am trying to keep you safe." She stared at him. "By pulling away every time this gets real." "That is not what I'm doing." "It is exactly what you're doing." Victor's hand left the crib rail. "You do not understand what this feels like." "Then tell me." He laughed once, empty and short. "You think I haven't tried." "No," her voice sharpened. "I think you're trying to control your way around fear again, and it's not working." He turned toward the window. "I should have protected them." Imani closed her eyes for 1 second. The room smelled like new wood and paint and fresh linen from the unmade crib mattresses. When she spoke, her voice was softer. "You were 19. I should have gone upstairs first. You do not know that. His face went hard. I do. Imani took another step toward him. Victor, listen to me. He did not move. You are not going to love these babies by planning for the worst thing that could happen. That hit him. She saw it hit. But instead of breaking, he closed off more. And for the first time in a long time, Imani felt afraid. Not of him hurting her. Of losing him to the part of himself that believed pain was safer than hope. The next morning, Victor left for Boston. He said it was for a project review. Imani stood in the dressing room doorway, one hand on her back, watching him knot his tie with the same cold focus he used when he wanted his face to say nothing. You have 3 people under you who can do a project review, she said. Victor kept his eyes on the mirror. This one needs me. No, Imani said it flat. You need an excuse. His hands stopped for 1 second. Then they started again. You are angry, he said. Imani gave a short laugh. That is one way to say it. Victor picked up his watch from the dresser. I'll be back Friday. He said it like Friday was the important thing. Not what had happened in the nursery. Not what he had admitted. Not the way he had pulled away from her every day since they learned there were 2 babies instead of 1. Friday. Imani folded her arms over her chest. You still don't get it. That made him look at her. Then tell me. She stared at him. I am carrying your children, Victor. I am not one more problem you can solve by leaving the room. His jaw tightened. For 1 second, she thought he might say something real. Instead he said, You should rest more. You've been on your feet too much. Imani just looked at him. Then she nodded once. Not because she agreed. Because she was done wasting good words on bad timing. Have a safe flight, she said. Victor picked up his briefcase. At the door he paused. Still not looking at her, he said, Call if you need anything. Imani's laugh came out low and sharp. That is almost funny. Then he left. The house felt bigger when he was gone. Colder too. Imani hated that she noticed. She hated that she could walk into the kitchen and know exactly where he would have stood with his coffee. That she looked toward the library at 2 in the morning and half expected to see the lamp on. That the silence in the estate felt different now, because it no longer belonged to a stranger she happened to live with. It belonged to a man she loved. A man who was making a mess of that love because he was scared of what came with it. By Wednesday, the gossip started. It began the way that stuff always does. Small and cheap. A blurry photo online. A headline with too much attitude and not enough truth. Victor Hale's wife seen leaving private legal office alone. By lunch there were more. Contract marriage rumors back on the table. Sources claim cracks inside the Hale home. Questions around inheritance as millionaire wife expects twins. Imani stared at the screen in the breakfast room until the words blurred. She knew where the photo had come from. The lawyer's office downtown. She had gone there twice. Not to betray Victor. Not to steal anything. Not to sneak behind his back for money. She had gone because Lenora Hale had made 2 comments at dinner that stuck in her chest like splinters. The first had come with a smile. Twins change the balance of a family very fast. The second had sounded almost sweet. I do hope someone is helping you understand what happens if Victor's side turns ugly after the babies come. Imani knew a warning when she heard one. So she got advice. Quiet advice. About trust protections. About the twins' future. About how to keep Victor's family from using old will language and board tricks against children who were not even born yet. She had wanted to tell Victor. Twice she had almost done it. Twice she stopped because every time she tried to bring up family, inheritance, or the babies, his whole body went rigid. So she handled it herself. Now somebody had seen her. By afternoon the story got uglier. Old photos of her flower shop appeared beside lines about gold diggers, strategic wives, and poor girls who marry rich and learn fast. Imani shut her laptop, then opened it again, then shut it. Her mother called 10 minutes later. Baby, I'm fine. That sounded like a lie with shoes on. Imani sat down at the edge of the bed. I said I'm fine. Evelyn let that sit there a second. Do you want me to come over? No. Do you want me to stop asking smart questions and just bring food? That almost made Imani cry. Almost. She pressed a hand over her eyes. Maybe. I'll be there by 6. After the call, Imani went downstairs because sitting still made the noise in her head worse. The cook kept giving her careful looks. The housekeeper moved around her like she was carrying glass under her skin. By 5:30, Victor still had not called. By 6, the story was on 3 bigger sites. By 7:15, his office released one sentence through a spokesperson. No comment on private family matters. Imani stared at those words until anger pushed past hurt and stood up straight. Private family matters. As if she were a stain to manage. As if the woman carrying his children was just one more piece of trouble to keep off the front page. When Victor came home after 11, the house was dark except for the lamp in the sitting room. Imani was there waiting in a robe and socks, one hand resting under her stomach, too tired to pace and too angry to sleep. He stepped inside, saw her, and stopped. His tie was loose. His face looked worn down in a way she might have cared about 6 hours earlier. Now it only made her chest ache. Victor set his phone on the side table. I'll have legal bury it. That was the first thing he said. Imani actually laughed. Not because it was funny. Because sometimes a person says exactly the wrong thing so perfectly you have to laugh or you'll break something. Bury it. Victor looked at her. Yes. That is what you came home with. It's being handled. Handled. She got to her feet slowly. Victor, they called me a liar, a gold digger, and every ugly thing people say when they need a black woman to look smaller than she is, and your answer is handled. His jaw shifted. What would you like me to say? Imani stared at him. For a second she could not even speak, which made her angrier. Finally she said, You could start with I'm sorry. Victor was quiet. She took one step toward him. You could say, I'm sorry they used my wife's face for sport today. I'm sorry you had to sit here alone while strangers talked about your body and your children like you were a scheme instead of a person. His eyes moved over her face, but she could not read them. Or maybe she could and did not like what she saw. Because there it was again. That distance. That terrible, careful distance. Victor. Her voice dropped. Why are you looking at me like that? He did not answer fast enough. The whole room changed shape in that silence. Imani felt it before the words came. When they did, they came quiet, which was worse. I need to ask you something. Her stomach turned cold. No, she said. Victor's face did not move. You met with a private firm downtown twice. Imani blinked once. You had me followed. I had security check when the article broke. You had me followed. His voice stayed level. Who were you meeting? For a second, she just stared at him. Not because she had no answer, because she could not believe the question. Then she said very slowly, You think I betrayed you? Victor looked away first. That was answer enough. Imani felt something inside her go still. What exactly do you think I did? She asked. Victor drew in one breath through his nose. I think my aunt has been moving pieces for weeks. I think private family documents were discussed outside this house. I think your timing with that law office is a problem. A problem? She repeated the words like she had never heard English before. Say it plain. His eyes came back to hers. And there it was. The wound in him. The fear. The old terror wearing a clean suit and speaking like a board memo. I think it is possible. He chose each word so carefully it made her want to scream. That you were advised to secure your position before the twins are born. Imani's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Then she just laughed, sharp and low and hurt. My position. Victor did not speak. She nodded slowly, like she was helping her own body catch up. So this whole time, she said, you thought maybe I was planning something. I did not say that. No, she pointed at him. You said it like a coward. Cleaner, nicer. But that is what you meant. Victor's voice dropped. You kept it from me. Imani stepped closer. Because every time I brought up family money or the baby's future, you shut down like a locked door. You still hid it. I protected our children. Without telling me. Because I did not know if you could hear me without turning it into a threat. That hit him. She saw it. And maybe in another moment she would have stopped there. But too much had piled up. The articles. The silence. The look on his face right now. All of it. So she kept going. You want the truth. Her eyes burned. Your aunt made it clear she was watching me. I went to get advice on how to protect these babies from the snakes in your family, because somebody in this house had to act like a parent instead of a scared little boy chasing ghosts through a nursery. Victor's face changed. Not much. Just enough. Enough to know she had cut clean through. He took one step toward her. Do not. Do not what? Imani shot back. Tell the truth in your own house. His voice came lower. Harder. Do not use them to make your point. She stared at him. Them. Not our babies. Them. That landed like a slap without a hand. Imani's eyes filled before she could stop it, and she got mad at herself for letting him see. You know what hurts? She said, her voice shaking now. It's not even the gossip. It's not even your aunt. It's you standing here looking me in the face like after everything, after all of it, I am still some woman who might sell you out if the number got high enough. Victor looked at her with that terrible stillness that always meant he was losing the fight to feel something human and hated it. Then he said the worst thing yet. I made the mistake of believing you were different. The room went dead. Not silent. Dead. Imani just stood there looking at him. Then she nodded once. Twice. Like the truth had finally finished introducing itself. Okay, she said. Victor's brow moved a fraction. Imani. No, she backed away from him. Do not fix that now. Do not clean it up. You said what you meant. He took another step. That is not what I meant. Then you should learn to mean better. She turned and walked out before the tears could come hard. Victor followed her into the hall. Imani. She did not stop. He followed her up the stairs. Listen to me. At the nursery door, she turned so fast he almost walked into her. You listen to me. Victor went quiet. Her chest rose and fell too fast. One hand held the curve of her stomach. The other gripped the doorframe. I have stood in this house and loved you through grief that was not mine, she said. I have held space for pain you would not name. I have stayed while you pulled away. I have watched you love these children like they were already being taken from you, and still I stayed. And tonight, after all that, you looked at me like I was a thief. Victor's face had gone pale in a way she had only seen once before. Imani. But she was not done. You do not get to punish me because you are afraid. He looked like she had put a knife right between his ribs. And you do not get to lie to me in my own house. He shot back. She stared at him. There it was. The line from the deepest part of his fear. Not about law offices. Not about documents. Not really. About the fact that love had made him vulnerable again, and he hated what that felt like. You really think I betrayed you? She said. He did not answer fast enough. Then pain grabbed low across her back so hard her hand slammed against the doorframe. Victor straightened. What? Imani sucked in air. The pain eased. Then came again, sharper. Victor. This time her voice came thin. Something's wrong. He was beside her at once. Is it the babies? I don't know. She bent a little, one hand under her stomach now. I don't know. I just... Another wave hit. Victor's whole body changed. All the anger vanished so fast it was almost frightening. He put one hand behind her back and the other under her elbow. We're going to the hospital. It might be nothing. It is not nothing. Victor. But he was already moving, calling for the driver, shouting for Mrs. Colfax from the landing, telling somebody to bring her shoes, then changing his mind and saying forget the shoes. Imani would have laughed on another night. Not tonight. The ride to the hospital blurred. Lights. Rain starting on the windshield. Victor's hand around hers so tight her rings pressed into her skin. Doctors said stress. Early contractions. Watchful monitoring. Not full labor yet. Too soon to panic, though nobody used that word. Imani was kept overnight. Victor stayed in the chair beside her bed and did not sleep once. At 4 in the morning, when the room was dark except for monitor lights, She woke and found him watching the floor with both hands locked together between his knees. He looked up when she moved. For a second neither of them said anything. Too much had happened. Too much still sat there between them. Finally Victor stood and came to the bedside. His voice was low, rough. "I was wrong." Imani looked at him but did not make it easy. "That is true," she said. Victor closed his eyes for 1 second, opened them again. "I let fear take over before facts," he said. "That is my fault. Yes, I should not have spoken to you that way." "No." He nodded once like he deserved the short answers and knew it. Then he said, "The meeting with the law firm. My aunt tipped security off to it weeks ago. She held it until now." Imani frowned. "What?" "She wanted the article to break after I found out, not before." "Why?" Victor's mouth went flat. "Because she knew exactly what I would do with half the story." Imani stared at him. "You know she set this up." "Yes. And you still asked me." Victor looked at her like a man standing in his own wreckage. "Yes, that honesty was ugly, but it was honest." Imani turned her face toward the window. Dawn had not come yet, just that deep gray hour where everything looks half-finished. After a minute she asked, "Did you ever trust me?" Victor answered right away. "Yes." She turned back. He stood there in yesterday's shirt, tie gone, face tired enough to show his age for once. "Then why?" His answer took longer. "Because." He swallowed once. "Trust is easy when I feel in control. Love is what makes it hard." Imani looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "That is not romantic." "No. It is not even smart." "No. It is just sad." Victor let out a breath that almost sounded like a laugh with all the joy removed. "Yes." A nurse came in then and broke the moment. Checks, notes, quiet steps, a blood pressure cuff. A kind smile aimed mostly at Imani and only a little at the man in the chair who looked like he had spent the night losing arguments with himself. By afternoon the contractions eased enough for her to go home on strict rest. Back at the estate the nursery looked the same. That felt wrong. The crib by the window, the folded blankets, the rocking chair, all of it unchanged, even though nothing between them felt steady anymore. Victor tried. That was the problem. He really did try. He fired the private investigator, cut off Lenora's access to the house, removed Gideon from 2 company meetings and 1 family trust call, had legal send warnings to the gossip sites, ordered the guards not to share 1 single movement of hers with anyone outside direct medical need. He moved like a man fixing a burst pipe. Fast, sharp, effective. None of it touched the sentence he had said to her. "I made the mistake of believing you were different." You cannot unsay a thing like that with paperwork. 3 days later, Imani packed a bag. Not a dramatic one. 2 dresses. 3 soft shirts. Underthings. Her medicine. A sweater. Baby papers. Charger. Victor found her in the bedroom zipping it shut. He stopped in the doorway. "What is this?" She did not look up. "A bag. I can see that. I'm glad one of us is having a useful evening." His face tightened. "Where are you going?" "To my mother's lake cottage." "No." Imani looked up then. Not angry. Done. Victor saw it and changed his tone at once. "You should not be traveling. The doctor said short travel was fine if I stay careful. I can have your mother brought here." Imani laughed once. "That is exactly the kind of sentence that makes me need to leave." He walked in farther. "Imani." She rested both hands on the bag. "I need quiet where everything does not feel managed." His face changed. Just a little, but enough to show the hit landed. "This is still your home," he said. She looked around the room. The stone fireplace, the long windows, the bed they had shared, the life that had grown real here and then split open. "Maybe," she said, "but it does not feel safe right now." Victor went very still. Not angry still. Worse, the stillness of a man hearing the bill for something he broke himself. She picked up the bag. He did not stop her. That hurt more than if he had tried. When she reached the door, he said her name once. "Imani." She turned. His voice was quiet. I am sorry. She believed him. That was the hardest part. But belief was not the same thing as healing. So she said nothing. And she left. The lake cottage sat 3 hours north of the estate. It was small, old, painted blue a long time ago and then left to weather as it pleased. The porch leaned a little. One shutter never closed right. The kettle in the kitchen had a chip near the handle that Evelyn kept meaning to replace and never did. Imani loved it. Not because it was grand. Because it was honest. Nothing in that place pretended to be more than it was. The floors creaked. The windows rattled when wind came off the water. The couch had seen too many winters and held every one of them in the cushions. When Imani was 15, she hated coming there. At 30, with one bag in the trunk and 2 babies pressing low under her ribs, it felt like the only place in the world where she could hear her own thoughts. Her mother met her at the door before she even got the second bag out of the car. Evelyn took one look at her face and pulled her into a careful hug. I will ask questions later, she said. Right now, come sit down. Imani sat. Then she cried. Not pretty tears either. The tired kind. The angry kind. The kind that come when you have been holding too much in the same place for too long. Evelyn sat beside her on the couch and handed her tissues from the same box that had probably been in that room since the last election. He thought I betrayed him, Imani said at last. Evelyn's face changed. He said that. Not clean, not straight, but yes. Her mother took a slow breath through her nose. That foolish man. Imani laughed once through the tears. That is a gentle word for what I have in mind. Evelyn rubbed her back. You can love somebody and still want to shake better sense into them. That is exactly the problem. Her mother nodded. I know. Victor called 12 times that first night. Imani looked at the screen every single time. Did not answer. She knew that was childish. She also knew answering too soon would be worse. At 1:13 in the morning, the phone rang again. She picked it up before she could think better of it. Hello. For a second, all she heard was his breathing. Then, low and rough, Victor said, Imani. She sat down on the edge of the bed. Not because she meant to, because his voice did something to her still, no matter how angry she was. I'm fine, she said. Send me the address. No. Pause. Then, please. That word from Victor still sounded strange. Not weak, just unused. Imani stared at the dark window over the dresser. You do not get to treat me like a crisis plan and call that love. His breath caught a little. When he spoke again, his voice had dropped. I know. Do you? Yes. He sounded less sure now, less composed. I think I have known it for weeks. I just did not know what to do next. Imani shut her eyes. A year ago, that answer would have moved her at once. Now it only hurt. Figure it out, she said, and hung up before she could forgive him too early. The next few days moved slow. Imani rested because the doctor had used the kind of voice that made even stubborn women listen. She sat on the porch with a blanket over her knees. She folded tiny baby clothes her mother had kept in a cedar chest from years ago. She ate soup. She slept when she could. She watched wind move across the lake and tried not to think too hard. Victor called every day, sometimes twice. He did not leave long messages. That was not his way. Usually it was something plain. I hope you ate. The doctor's office called. They moved your next checkup to Tuesday. There is a package from the nursery company. I told them to hold it. Then, one afternoon, a longer one. My aunt is gone from the trust. Gideon too. That does not fix what I said. I know that. I am only telling you because you should not hear it from anyone else. Imani listened to that message 3 times. Did not call back. But she saved it. That was her problem with Victor even now. He could be so exact when it was too late. So honest after he had already done the damage. The storm rolled in on the 10th day. It started around noon with a heavy sky over the lake and that strange green-gray light that always made the world look like it was holding its breath. By 4, the first rain hit the porch roof. By 6, wind bent the pines down near the water. Evelyn stood at the kitchen sink watching the trees move. This one's got attitude. Imani was in the pantry pretending she could still reorganize things like a normal person and not a woman carrying twins with swollen ankles and a back that had filed formal complaints. "It'll pass," she said. Her mother turned. "Baby, you are sweating." Imani looked down at herself. She was a lot. "That's rude," she muttered. Then the pressure hit low across her back. Not sharp at first, just deep, insistent. She held the pantry shelf and waited. Passed. Evelyn was already watching her face. What was that? Nothing. That looked like something. Imani straightened slowly. Probably stood too long. Her mother made a sound that said she did not believe that for 1 second. By 7:30, Imani was gripping the kitchen counter every 10 minutes and trying not to show it. By 8:15, she had stopped pretending. Evelyn was already dialing. "I can drive," Imani said through her teeth. "No, you cannot. I mean, not right this second." Exactly. The local hospital was 20 minutes away in good weather. The weather had other plans. Rain slapped the windshield so hard it looked like somebody was throwing handfuls of lake water at the glass. The wipers worked themselves silly. The road shone black and mean under the headlights. Evelyn drove like a woman who trusted neither storms nor men and had lived long enough to be right about both. Imani gripped the door handle and breathed through another contraction. "This is not how I wanted tonight to go." Her mother kept her eyes on the road. "Most babies do not care about your preferences." At the hospital, a nurse named Tessa took one look at Imani and got moving. Tessa was short, fast, and spoke like every second had a job to do. "Don't bite the bed rail," she said while helping Imani change. "It never helps anybody. If you need to cuss, cuss. If you need to squeeze something, squeeze the pillow. If you squeeze me, I charge extra." Imani laughed weakly. Then another contraction took the laugh right out of her. "Call him," Evelyn said to Tessa quietly by the door. Imani heard it anyway. "No." Tessa looked at her. "That's your husband. That's also a whole situation." Tessa raised one brow. "Ma'am, with love and respect, this is labor. Most situations get smaller after that." Evelyn already had her phone out. By the time Imani could argue again, the call had been made. Victor answered on the first ring. Tessa checked monitors. Evelyn rubbed Imani's shoulder. Rain struck the windows in hard bursts. Time got strange after that. A contraction can make 5 minutes feel like a hallway with no end. At 11:17 p.m., the door opened. Victor came in looking like he had fought the storm himself. His hair was wet. His coat was half-buttoned wrong. His shirt was wrinkled in a way Imani had never seen before. No tie. Mud on one shoe. Face pale and eyes lit with that flat, dangerous focus fear gives some men. He crossed the room in 6 fast steps. Tessa put up a hand without even blinking. "Washington." Victor stopped. For 1 second, Imani thought any other man might argue. Victor did not. He went straight to the sink and scrubbed his hands like he was disarming something explosive. Imani watched him over the curve of her stomach. When he came to the bedside, she was too tired to guard herself. "You found it," she whispered. Victor's face shifted. Just once. Enough to show how close to breaking he already was. "I called your mother," he said. "Then the sheriff. Then a state trooper who owes me a favor. Then I drove through what felt like the entire Atlantic Ocean. That would have been funny another day. Tonight it just made her eyes burn." Another contraction hit, and she grabbed his hand so hard his knuckles went white. He did not move, did not flinch, did not look away. Hours passed in pieces after that. Bright lights, low voices, Tessa giving orders like she had no interest in drama and even less interest in excuses. A doctor with kind eyes and steady hands. Evelyn praying under her breath in the chair by the wall. And Victor, always there. When Imani squeezed his hand, he gave it back. When she cursed him out for reasons neither of them would remember later, he took it. When she cried that she was too tired, his forehead pressed briefly against hers and he said, I know. Stay with me." At one point Tessa looked at him and said, "You're doing okay, Dad." Victor blinked like the title hit him in the chest. Then he nodded once. Morning came late and gray through the hospital window. The first baby arrived just before dawn. A girl. Dark hair plastered to her tiny head. Tiny fists already angry at the whole arrangement. Lungs strong enough to let everybody know she had opinions and would be filing them often. Her cry filled the room. Victor made a sound Imani had never heard from him. Not a word. Just one broken exhale, like some locked part of his chest had finally given way. Tessa smiled. That one's got a voice. Imani laughed and cried at the same time because there was no longer any line between those things. Victor looked at the baby with open wonder and fear tangled together so tightly they were almost the same thing. Then the second baby came. A boy. And he was too quiet. The room changed in 1 second. Nobody announced it. Nobody needed to. People just moved faster. The doctor leaned in. Tessa rubbed the baby's back. Another nurse checked color and air and heartbeat and all the things that suddenly mattered more than anything in the world. Victor went white around the mouth. Imani saw it, and she knew exactly where he had gone. Not this room. That room. Not now. Then. Victor, she said, but her voice came out thin and far away. He stepped toward the bassinet before anyone could stop him. His hand hovered over the baby. Shaking. Actually shaking. Hey, he said. The word cracked right down the middle. Nobody interrupted him. Not the doctor. Not Tessa. Not Evelyn. The whole room seemed to understand that something bigger than fear was happening now. Victor bent lower. His face broke open in a way Imani had never seen. No mask. No pride. No distance. Just a man standing at the edge of the worst moment of his life and refusing to lose another child to it. No, he whispered. Then louder. No. Don't do this. I'm here now. Tears were already on his face. Real tears. Not neat ones. The kind that come when a person has held back a flood for years and the wall finally gives. I know, he said, voice shaking hard now. I know I'm late to everything that matters, but not this. Not with you. I'm here. I'm here. And then the baby cried. One raw, ragged, furious sound. Then another. Then one more, louder than the first two. As if he had finally decided the whole experience was outrageous and wanted it on record. The girl answered from the warmer like she had been waiting for company. 2 babies. 2 cries. 2 furious little voices filling up every inch of that room. Victor let out a laugh. Surprised him as much as anyone else. You could hear it. That first little burst of relief and disbelief breaking loose right through the tears. He covered his mouth with one hand like he might stop it. He couldn't. Another laugh came out. Then another. Tessa looked up. The doctor looked up. Evelyn put a hand over her own mouth and started crying too. Imani stared at him through tears and sweat and total exhaustion. She had imagined his first real smile 100 ways and never admitted it to herself. Maybe in the kitchen one quiet night. Maybe in the greenhouse. Maybe years from now after enough healing had passed between them. Not here. Not with storm rain still on the windows and his shirt wrinkled and his hair a mess and 2 screaming newborns acting like they had arrived to settle old scores. But there it was. Not small. Not careful. His whole face changed. Years fell away from him in one breath. The hard lines around his mouth gave up. His eyes looked brighter, younger, almost startled by their own light. He turned to her, still crying and still smiling. Mara, he said, and then stopped. Imani stared at him. He stared back. For one tiny strange second, even in that room with everything that had just happened, her tired brain caught the name before anything else. Not because it belonged there, because it didn't. Victor closed his eyes hard, like he had been hit. When he opened them, he looked wrecked all over again. Imani. His voice dropped. Imani, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The room faded around them for a second. Not because the name meant another woman. Didn't. She knew that before he even explained it. Mara was his mother. The woman who had liked storms. The woman from the old photo. The woman whose grief had wrapped itself around this whole house and this whole man for years. Victor was crying harder now. I haven't said her name out loud in years. He shook his head once like he hated himself for the slip. I looked at him and I was back there, and then I heard him cry and He stopped because the sentence had broken apart. Imani held out her hand. Victor came to her at once, bent over the bed, pressed his forehead to hers. The babies kept crying in the background, loud and alive and deeply offended by the whole morning. "They're loud," he whispered, half laughing, half crying. Imani let out one tired, shaky laugh. "They're ours." That afternoon the storm passed. Weak sunlight finally showed up at the window like it had almost missed the whole event. Imani woke from a short sleep to find Victor in the chair by the bed. Their son was asleep against one shoulder. Their daughter was curled on his chest. Victor sat almost perfectly still, like happiness was a small animal that might run if he breathed wrong. Imani watched him for a minute before speaking. "You should rest." Victor looked up. The babies stayed asleep. He looked down at them, then back at her. "I did something unforgivable," he said quietly. Imani waited. His face looked older now, not worn down, just honest. "I spent months preparing to lose them instead of trusting them enough to arrive." Imani looked at him, at the crease in his shirt, at the dried salt track on one cheek, at the way his big hand covered almost the whole back of their daughter's tiny body. Then she said, "You arrived. Late." "Yes," she said, "and scared, and stupid in at least 3 different ways. But you came." Victor let out a shaky breath that almost became a laugh. Then he looked at her with a kind of plainness she had only gotten from him a few times. "I love you," he said. "I think I have loved you since the night you told me my centerpieces were bad." Imani smiled, tired and soft. "They were bad. They were expensive. They were still bad." This time he smiled again. Not the broken relief smile from the delivery room. A smaller one. A real one. 3 weeks later, a photographer caught him outside the hospital annex after the twins' final checkup. Imani was in the passenger seat. One baby was asleep. The other had just sneezed so hard Victor looked personally offended by baby faces as a concept. The photo ran everywhere. Victor Hale, the man who had not smiled in years, standing in a wrinkled navy sweater with spit up on one shoulder, looking down at a 6-pound baby like the rest of the world had never mattered much at all. People lost their minds. The papers called it a transformation. His board called it good optics. His aunt called it suspicious. Imani called it Tuesday. Back at the estate, nothing turned perfect. That matters. Victor did not wake up one morning healed all the way through. Grief does not work like that. Regret does not either. There were still nights when he stood too long in the nursery doorway. Still days when the sound of a sudden alarm somewhere in the house made his body go rigid before his mind caught up. Still moments when shame crossed his face because he remembered what he had said to Imani and knew no amount of love would erase the fact that he had said it at all. That was the bitter part. He could not undo those words. He could only live better than the man who said them. So he did. He stayed. That was the change. He stayed for feedings, for doctor visits, for bad nights, for baths that somehow soaked half the bathroom, for burp cloths and tiny socks and car seats that made him curse under his breath in ways Tessa would have approved of. He smiled now, not all the time, but often enough that the staff stopped freezing when they saw it. He smiled at Imani in the greenhouse, at Owen letting the twins grab his thumbs, at Evelyn teaching him there was, in fact, a wrong way to fold baby clothes and that he had found all of them, at the girl twin who hated cold bottles and demanded justice at full volume, at the boy twin who liked falling asleep on Victor's chest like he had picked his spot and meant to keep it. One evening in early fall, Imani found Victor standing in the front hall under the old family photo. The same one. His mother, his father, 19-year-old Victor, the twins in knit caps. He heard her steps and looked over. Imani came to stand beside him. For a minute, neither of them said anything. Then Victor said, "I used to think if I let myself feel anything good again, it would mean I had failed them." Imani looked at the photo. "And now?" she asked. He looked toward the nursery hall where one baby had just started fussing and the other would almost surely join in out of loyalty or competition. Now I think I failed them by turning grief into a house rule. Imani let that sit there. Then she slipped her hand into his. Victor looked down at their fingers. She said, "Forgiveness does not mean nothing happened. I know. It means we stop letting pain run the house." Victor nodded once. Then he looked at the photo again. Not with fear this time. Not with punishment. Just with sadness and love and the kind of peace people earn the hard way. "I still regret it," he said. "I know. That may never leave." Imani squeezed his hand. "Then let it teach you. Don't let it own you." He looked at her. Smiled once. Soft. Tired. Real. And from upstairs came the sound that changed him first and kept changing him every day after. 2 babies crying at once. Victor looked up toward the stairs and let out a quiet laugh. Then he said, "Duty calls." Imani smiled. "That is one way to say it." He started toward the staircase, then paused and looked back at her. "I love you," he said. This time the words came easier. Not because they mattered less. Because he finally let them live where they belonged. In the open. Imani watched him go upstairs into the noise and the mess and the life of the family they had nearly lost to old fear. And that was the real miracle. Not that a cruel man turned soft overnight. He didn't. Not that grief vanished. Didn't. The miracle was that he finally understood the dead are not honored by starving the living. Love did not erase his pain. It taught him how to carry it without handing it to everybody else. And that is the lesson here. Forgiveness frees the soul. Not cheap forgiveness. Not rushed forgiveness. The real kind. The kind that tells the truth first. The kind that makes a person change. The kind that breaks old chains without pretending they were never there. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and support this channel. Leave a comment and tell me this. Could you have forgiven Victor after what he said to Imani? Or would that have been the end for you? And tell me where you're watching from, because I love seeing how far these stories travel. I'll see you in the next one.